I'm Rose. Today I'm taking you on a painting trip. So today I'm painting outside or en plein air. I'm really excited. I wanted to do this all summer and I think this is going to be the last really warm weekend out here for us. I kind of look like I'm cosplaying something today, but making it work. Alright, let's get set up. Okay, I took off my mask because fortunately nobody's around right now. It's very peaceful. So here, I'm going to show you my little setup. Nothing glamorous, but here goes. A lawn chair. Here are my paints. Some microns. I'm going to do some inking first, and then this is for my phone so I can film. And then down there in my travel mug, just a little bit of water for my watercolor. Alrighty, so let's see what I come up with today. Oh, one last thing, I already prepped some watercolor paper with washi tape. It's just hanging out on this cardboard box, which is not going to be ideal, but it's my first time doing this. We'll see how it goes. So I brought two different colors of pens and also types. So I have two black ones in sort of a thick bullet nib and a brush pen. Are these things called bullet nibs? This one. So I'm probably going to use a combination of those, and then maybe we'll move spots a little bit and I'll use these two brown ones. This location is one of my favorite little hidden places I've discovered recently. It's a great place to be outdoors, just to enjoy the weather, enjoy the trees and the calm sounds. And I think the stream is just so beautiful. There are a bunch of tiny waterfalls all along it, and this one seemed to be the perfect place to sit down and draw for a while. Now, pretty much as soon as I sat down and actually began using these pens, I realized how new this whole experience was to me. First of all, I almost never work with brush pens. I really admire people who work in ink a lot and people who don't sketch first as well. So I just had it in my brain like, oh, I really want to do that. But I'm still getting a lot of control with the brush tip pens. So for a while I was drawing, it really felt like I was doing something I'd never done before, kind of going into the unknown with just about every element. There's actually a while where I felt like this was turning out quite childish in a bad way, but I ended up changing my mind on it. I think some of my favorite parts of this first piece are the more stylized leaves and trees, and the parts I sketched out really quickly. I think they just captured the essence of the space in a way that I really wasn't expecting. Doing this kind of piece is also something that's really new to me. I do a lot of figure drawing and almost no backgrounds or landscapes, so this was a great change of pace. Now here I am bringing out a couple watercolors. I love this watercolor set, especially for travel because they are in this cake form. So they're dry, they're not going to leak at all. The other interesting thing about them is that they're really opaque for watercolors, which is kind of unusual. So you can get an interesting finish on them, as you'll see when I start working on some of the details of this piece. So at this point, I was a little worried about the piece, I'm gonna be honest. It was hard to see the forms. I think it's hard to even distinguish at this point what is water and what is rock, tree, all those kind of things. But the color really starts to bring it together very quickly. I started to just get playful with it, honestly. I started to block out large areas with some of my favorite colors to use from this set, and then I start building up layers. Now right about here is where I start gaining confidence in the overall piece again. I love adding texture with these watercolors. I think it's so fun. Oh, there it is. Oh no! Well, that's part of it now. That's something that happens when you're working outside in a very limited space with a sort of unconventional setup. But I find a way to work that into the second piece. So now finally I think you can see that there's a waterfall happening, which was really important to me. But it's so challenging to get just the right reflections and the depth of the water. It's something I still want to work on a lot more. I spent over 2 hours outside when I was doing this filming, which really surprised me, to be honest. I thought these relatively small paintings would go pretty quickly, but again, it was one of my first times doing a sort of a landscape or a highly detailed outdoor place. So even though it looks extremely sketchy in the footage, it took a lot for me to sort of train my eye on the right elements of this creek, the surrounding leaves, each individual rock, the sort of crumbly rock ledge around the waterfall. It took some practice, honestly, for my eyes to get used to understanding what was going on in that space. As an early fall day, or at least early for where I live, there were a few leaves on the ground, yellow, brown mostly. And here's where I start adding some of those. I love just sort of the layered blobbiness of the paints. I think it really shows off the medium well, and it's a fun thing to do. Here is where you see the gradual process of me trying to darken up the truly dark areas of this setting around the base of the waterfall. That is one of the biggest challenges of these watercolors. I've found when they dry, they go super light, so they actually kind of lift in color. And then I typically end up doing layer after layer on the truly dark areas. So, way more abstract than I ever expected. I feel like I've learned a lot of things, and I'm going to move positions, and I will, try to take what I learned from my first one and apply it to the second one here. So essentially I moved my chair a little bit closer because I really wanted to think about that tiny waterfall, what it looked like, how it works, how to convey sort of that movement within the piece. I actually picked up the fine point micron here because I was feeling a little bit overwhelmed by the brush pen, and it really caused me to take a different approach with the inking here. So I almost didn't look down. I was just trying to trace each one of these rock forms with my eye and move my pen back and forth along those forms, adding some texture, extra lines in the darker areas. And so I definitely got a more precise look at that rocky area. At the same time, I think this kind of stiffened the overall drawing, which is a curious effect. And there is a long period of doubt where I'm drawing this and it doesn't really look like anything. I'm not sure it was right to switch pens, although I do enjoy the brown ink. I think it wraps in really well with the colors. It's just so difficult to convey the right level of detail, do it, with reasonable speed before the sun goes down on me. I just kind of pressed through and tried to capture exactly what my eye was seeing, which was a really good exercise. And it was at this point where I knew I definitely wanted to do something like this again, probably at a more simple location and maybe with some different materials. I would love to do something, for instance, on a hillside or maybe somewhere where you could see a lot of clouds and try to capture that really quickly and really effectively. I think the level of detail within this scene was pretty challenging to me just because there were so many different layers of plants and trees in the distance, and conveying exactly where those were it was a big challenge. Now I pick up the brush pen to add some more depth and kind of carve out the tiny little waterfall area and try to see if I can make sense of this whole scene. Now this is something that's going to happen a few times with this particular piece. I think it's so important to step out of your comfort zone like this and start something completely new. Is very refreshing to me. So with this one, after I blob down the color, you can definitely see the forms better again. So I just start trying to add that depth, and I really focus on what the water looks like this time. I felt really focused while I was doing all of this. It was different from where I usually would work at my desk. I wasn't listening to music or anything. I was just listening to the sound of the stream, sort of the critters around me, squirrels and whatnot. It looks like here I start adding some moss and texture, which is one of my favorite things to do, just like the leaves in the last one. Adding in these pops of green suddenly turned the brown blob of rock into something more real in my brain. So I go back and I do that a few times. I love these leaves too, but they go through many iterations, as you'll see. There was something about these two pieces that was so fun and low pressure because I didn't have any expectations for them. And to be honest, I place a lot of those expectations upon myself pretty much any time I do art. So it's a really important part of my process to find ways to alleviate that pressure. And I think by doing something I've never done before, something I kind of had to guess my way through, I was more so pleasantly surprised than anything else, no matter how it was turning out, Even when I was feeling sort of confused or lost by these two paintings, I felt, I felt really engaged because my brain was working on something new. So sometimes when you can get your brain thinking like that, it distracts you from sort of the art anxiety. By this point in the day, a really beautiful gold light was coming through some of the trees in the distance. So I really focused on that color, as you can see near the top, fading away into the background, but also I tried to add some of these golden mustardy highlights on the water. I do think this one looks a lot more like water, but I am still pretty mystified by how you would render like depth or like the rocks at the bottom of the pool, anything like that. So let's compare them side by side for now. Ready? Wow, these are so different. They're so different. I like the waterfall way better here. I actually think this one, the composition is really charming, and my eye kind of knows where to go better for some reason. It feels like I'm going up. I think this one just needs some more ink, but I'm gonna have to wait for it to dry. Still wet, so I'm gonna have to be really careful getting this home. But it's all done. That was really fun. This is how I'm getting my stuff home. Works pretty well. So I'm back at my desk at home and I'm removing the washi tape. It did pull up a little bit of the paper. I'm still trying to find the perfect tape for this kind of thing, but I always love watching these tape peels. So here you go. So satisfying. Alright, and then I take a look at the two of these. Let's see. I think it turned out way better than I thought. I think the composition overall is really nice, and I think even though the lines are so bold and kind of abstract, that really brings something to it. This cat hair, on the other hand, doesn't. Okay. I think this one does a good job of like capturing the feeling of the place. And this one, I like the waterfall better, but the rest of it is kind of confusing looking. So I'm gonna do some more ink, and we'll see how that goes. If I ruin it, remember how it looked now. The micron pens and these opaque watercolors don't necessarily play super well together, because if you ink first and then put the watercolor on top of it, the opacity of that watercolor is definitely going to obscure some of your lines. So especially where it was important to see the details and sort of fun stylistically, I ended up inking over the lines again. I think these trees really end up popping out way more, and it sort of fixes some problems with depth that this had when I initially brought it back. Almost just like when I was outside, I spent a long time just staring at these forms and trying to figure out exactly what was the right thing to do. Oh, there's a smoke sighting. That's my cat Smoke. Maybe I'll like draw with them side by side so that I can look at what I like about this and put it in this. So more staring intently here. I'm staring at the first painting's lines, staring at all the forms I had down on the second painting, and just figuring out what worked best for my eye. It really felt like I was challenging myself here, almost doing sort of like an artistic workout, because puzzling out all these different shapes and figuring out how to convey depth was something I almost had zero experience in. But I found it really fun. It was kind of like a puzzle at some points. I think putting the two paintings side by side was a really good idea. I think it added a lot of clarity for me and just, you know, some direction when I felt a little lost. Hi, Smoke. Yep, that's Cat. Excuse me, buddy. Oh my God. Look at him. Smoke. I'm gonna finish drawing. He's always coming by to bite my pens and everything. A little interrupter. So I just have a few tiny finishing touches on this to add the right little bits of texture to balance out the two sides of the painting. Looks like some more details in the water. I do end up adding a little bit of white gel pen to both of these right at the end. You'll see it in the final shot. All right, we're closing in. This is just to balance out the image a little bit. And give it a little bit of added texture. Alright, after all of that, I'm much happier with how this one looks. I think the brown color of the ink is really interesting. And I really love this one. I think it's very expressive, super fast, super fun, lots of cool layers and texture. And here are both the paintings. I hope you enjoyed coming along with me to paint outdoors. What I want to know is, have you ever done anything like this? Have you painted outside before? And if so, what did you like about it? What did you find challenging? Would you ever do it again? I'm Rose, and thanks for coming along with me for my first ever art experiment. I'll see you again next time.